stepped in the Pint Glass and took over the threshold and took control of this fabulous building. Excuse my eyes in this line. And they stepped over to follow the dream of opening their own restaurant. Steeped in history, this building had been so neglected that some would say that the heart had left many years ago. But James and Kate could feel something else in the building, a stirring of something special, something that seemed to reach beyond the years and into their own hearts. And that is what they felt when they actually came here. Many months of hard work passed until one night, totally exhausted, they were awoken by the distinct smell of bacon and the gentle sound of hand whisk. Leaping out of bed, the noise stopped, and the smell disappeared. Had it been a dream? Maybe, but once or twice a week this would occur, always in the dead of night, and always accompanied by the most fantastical smells, but no amount of looking could uncover the cause of the noise and the delightful aroma of fresh bacon. The renovation continued unabated, finally reaching the upper levels and the removal of years of paint and wallpaper in what's now the private dining room, to reveal a further mystery. Underneath the wallpaper, on a disused chimney breast, was a small, recessed square, very much like a door, with no discernible way of being opened. Move on to 2007. A small piece of brown paper fell from between the pages of a book from the Beverley Archives department of the Town Council when it was moving to a new building. That small page was a forgotten recipe, a recipe for the East Yorkshire sugar cake. James was contacted to see what he thought about the recipe, and it was brought back to the Pipe and Glass where it was easily translated. Apart from a few places where it referenced something rather peculiar, something called a half-hoof measurement. Accompanying the recipe was an additional item, a very, very small ornate key. In 1822, a lady named Eliza Acton wanted to be a poet. Now, to be a poet, the best way to do it is to actually write. So she decided to be a writer and get herself a nice, big, ornate bureau to write out. This she did. She went to an old manor, brought one to auction, had it back, and placed it in the little library and started to write of an afternoon. The only thing is, when she first got the bureau and started to open drawers, she realised that the one on the left was accustomed to sticking. Eventually, she gave it a rather big yank, and out dropped a little square bit of paper. The square bit of paper, when she unfolded it, she realised was actually a recipe, and it was a recipe for a jam tart. Not only that, the jam tart measurements were also in half-hoof measurements. Inside the little square was a key, a small, round, ornate key. A few days later, she was sat one afternoon writing a poetry, and she noticed from out the back of the bureau there was a little tiny wisp of smoke travelling on. Thinking there was something wrong with the back of it, possibly a fire, she suddenly starts going through the entire drawers, open the front of the bureau, pulling the drawers out, until she gets to the drawer that jams. She pulls it that hard, she almost pulls the bureau over. As she looks inside, she sees right at the very end a very, very small ray of light. Does she know what it is? But remember, there was a small little key, and wonders whether it could be a little keyhole at the back of the drawer. She puts her hand in, runs her hand round, she actually feels that there is actually a keyhole there. Not only that, it's actually warm to the touch. She gets the key, sticks it in, turns it, and as she turns it, she hears a soft click, and the back of the bureau springs open. This is what she sees. Inside, she sees this creature, the Caketacular Queen of Bakes, and it's in a miniature kitchen, creating and baking all these fabulous things. You can see here it's got a little thing called a totem cake, which is stacks of cakes sat on top of each other with a little heart-shaped tart on top. This creature actually became friends with Eliza Acton over the next number of years, and it turned Eliza from being a poet into the first ever person to write a true recipe book with all the measurements given to people. Rather than having to be a professional chef, they could just measure them out and create their own recipes. And it was down to this creature and the discovery in the back of this bureau all those years ago that we now have the first ever recipe book that she produced. And that, if we go back in time, actually occurred. The Book of Modern Cookery by Eliza Acton was published in 1845. Now, the reason we don't remember Eliza Acton is because she was surpassed by Mrs. Beeton in 1861. And Mrs. Beeton actually stole half of Eliza Acton's recipes to actually produce her own little book. So, as time goes forward, we'll remember, obviously, certain victors above others. So, if we go back, remember, there was actually the little bit of paper found with the Yorkshire cake in there. So, the battered recipe for the East Yorkshire sugar cake from 1812 was the only surviving original Canter and Cake's Ackley Queen of Bakes recipe, and it was confirmed by the use of the half-hoof measurement. But a strange thing happened that night when it was brought back to the Pipe and Glass. Because that night, the whisking noises and the strange comforting bacon aroma in the middle of the night seemed exceptionally strong, and it got stronger. Just after 1 o'clock in the morning, a small light was seen to be coming from the side of the small recessed square in the private dining room. It was a keyhole. James took the key, found with the old recipe, and placed it into the hole. It fitted perfectly, and a faint click was heard as it turned, and the square revealed itself to be a door. James and Kate never spoke about what they saw beyond the small door, only that they had found the heart of the house where all their hopes, dreams and memories had been collected. It was a magical, wonderful place that radiating warmth and comfort that made sure the Pipe and Glass would never again seem as a cold and neglected place, only as a warm and welcoming place as the couple that made it so. Remember at the beginning of the story that we mentioned that there was missing diary pages? Well, the back of the story was pasted a single page ripped from a diary. On it was a story called The Secret Pantry. It was signed C. Dodson, or Charles Dodson, more better known as Lewis Carroll. The Pipe and Glass is just the start of the story. Wonderland is real. There are pieces of it everywhere, and you just really need to know where to find it. Tonight we'll start the journey and look at the first missing part of Wonderland that will open the missing pages of the third Wonderland book, The Secret Pantry.
Oh. Just in case anybody peeked.
Oh, wow.
Now this is actually looking into the little room that was behind the door upstairs. You can see everything, including everything you've eaten in tonight's meal. There is also James and his wife Kate doing the respective roles at the Pipe and Glass. But you'll also see, probably as the light casts across it, all the items and objects that you've actually got on your little plates that was given earlier. I mean, feel free to come and have a look at all the details. There's such a lot to take in on there. Not only is just the obvious things, but there's also not so obvious things. When James proposed to Kate, he actually wrote on a menu for the proposal. That is actually contained in here, but along with it, something else, if you look round the little neck round Kate, we've actually got a little diamond ring attached to it. And there's 2 bells attached to the back for the wedding. And you'll find little things scattered right the way through this piece. It's such a unique piece. And this is the opening piece for the trip to Wonderland that will carry us through the next 2 years with the Impossible.